So if you've been looking for a way to clean up your kick and bass tracks or just to add more impact to your music, this is a video for you. Today we're going to dive into the nuances of sidechain compression and sidechain envelope shaping. I don't even know if that's what it's called. Producers often use these sidechaining techniques to help percussive elements like kick and snare drum cut through a really dense mix. You hear it all the time in pop, EDM, and even rock and metal. And in this video, I'm going to teach you my two favorite tools for doing this and how they sound different and what strategy I'm now using to make my drums hit super hard. And if you're looking for a little bit more help with your music, I have a free rock and metal mixing cheat sheet that you can download. That is my gift to you. Go and grab it. It's super valuable. In another video, I showed exactly how I got this drum sound. So if you want to check that out too after this video, I'll put a link right up here. Something that I love to do to really make the kick and snare and toms and all that hit really hard is to sidechain a compressor onto our drum room mic. So let me just show you what the drum room sounds like and how big of an impact it makes on the overall sound. So this is the room mic we have without it in the drum mix. And with it in the drum mix. It's a huge part of the drum sound. So to make the kick and snare feel even bigger and more exciting, we're going to sidechain some compression or an envelope shaper to the drum room mic that gets activated when the snare or the kick drum are hit. Okay? So first things first, let's just throw any compressor we want. I like Wave C1. It's easy to use and it sounds good. So that's all I need. So to set this up in Cubase is we need to activate our sidechain, and then we're just going to feed the plugin the kick signal. So this is the kick drum track, and then the snare track. So you just add sidechain, and you would just do snare. When the sidechain is activated, this plugin is no longer listening to the drum room track. It's only listening to the kick drum and the snare drum. Okay, so when we hit play, you'll notice that the signal here is bouncing with the kick and snare now. And what this means is that the compression that's happening is being triggered by the kick and snare. So anytime the snare hits, it's doing gain reduction on the room track. Why this is important is that it gets this really big, huge, massive drum track out of the way so that the kick and snare can punch through, and then it lets the room track back in so it sounds like the room is exploding with width when the kick and snare hit. It's a really, really cool psychoacoustic trick that a lot of advanced mixers are using to make their drums really feel powerful and to get that room track out of the way so that it makes it feel explosive on every hit. So if we just listen to the room track with the kick and snare, you'll be able to hear the pumping that's happening on this room track. So Cubase has this cool feature called Listen. It's this little L button right here. And what that does is it allows us to just solo the room track with the sidechains running. So listen to what sidechain compression actually sounds like on the room track. I'm going to start pulling this down, and you'll actually hear the effect of the kick and snare on the room track. Here we go. Sounds kind of crazy, it's kind of fluttery and weird. We just want to make sure that it sounds a little bit more stable than that, a little bit less fluttery and more like the volumes just being turned down. And ideally, if we do this right, it'll be rhythmic with the tempo of the song. And that you just have to do by ear. So something like that feels about right to me. It's kind of pumping with the music. And now when I deactivate this listen mode, you're going to hear that. We're not going to notice all that pumping on the room track anymore. It's just going to sound like the kick and snare are punching through the mix a lot harder. And so what we're going to do as mixing engineers is just kind of dial this in so it feels like it has the right amount of impact, without it being distracting and add a lot of this movement. We want to try to minimize that and just make the drums feel more impactful. Right around here feels pretty good to me. So now at this point, let's hear the difference in the drum sound that we have when we have this sidechain compression and without it. It really makes it feel like the drummer's hitting the drum so hard. So that is the benefit of using it. Now you can take this a step further and not only have it in your drum room track, but you can also send it to, for example, your bass track. So we can do the same method as before. We just add in wave C1, put in sidechain, and then for this, let's just send it the kick drum, right? A lot of times producers have a hard time separating kick and bass, and it sounds muddy, and your kick drum loses its punch. Well, guess what? We can compress the bass anytime the kick drum's being hit this way. Let's just dial in like we'll do 8-1 on this one. Make it a little bit more aggressive. Tax fast, and then we can do a moderate release of like 100 to 200 milliseconds. And then we'll just fine tune this in by ear. Okay. So let's solo the bass and the kick drum so we can hear what it's doing together. And let's turn the listen on for the bass so we can hear the compression that the kick drum's doing to the bass guitar. Here we go. So I don't like the release being too short. It just kind of starts doing that fluttery thing. Too long, takes too much of the power away from the bass. So my happy medium is like somewhere around 80 milliseconds. So let's take the listen off and let's check out the song now and see how the kick and bass are playing together. There we go. So now it's dialed in. You feel the impact of the kick drum. You still feel the power of the bass when the kick drum's not there. And if we get rid of this, you'll notice that the kick drum, the sub energy kind of gets lost, right? With it. So there you have it. That is a great way to tighten up your kick and bass. So let's listen to it all together now when we have the room track being ducked by the compressor and then also the bass stem being ducked at the same time. So to me personally, the bass feels like it has too much movement. So I'd probably back off on this a little bit. And yeah, that's probably all I would do. It's a little aggressive. Maybe make this a little faster. And if we listen to it without any of the sidechain compression, again, listen to how we kind of lose the kick and snare in the mix. To me, the amount of punch and crack that's coming through this dense mix is pretty obvious. So that's the traditional way. That's how people have been doing it forever. Now let's talk about a new approach that you can use to actually make it sound better than that. So on a room track, instead of using a compressor to control the level and the ducking, we can use an envelope shaper. So this is called Duck by Devious Machines. I really, really like how this plugin sounds. It's super intuitive, easy to use, and they allow you to do some high and low band splitting of the signal where you don't want to have it feel like there's a lot of movement. We want to clean up the low energy. We can do that with this plugin by enabling this crossover frequency. I have it set to like 400 hertz. This is going to duck out all the frequencies anytime we go above a threshold. We could define our threshold using the trigger level, and we set this up the same way we do the compressor, where we feed in the kick and snare right into this sidechain. So when you hit play, you'll see now that the kick and snare signal are showing up on this plugin. Now to perform the ducking motion, you have to find the spot where the peak of the kick and snare are just going beyond this level here. And we have a bunch of different shapes you can use to do the ducking behavior. So if you want to hear what it sounds like, we can do that little listen trick. And what I like most about this is that it's all set up to be synced to the tempo of the track. And you have a lot more control over the shape of the pumping motion when you're ducking the low frequencies from the drum room track. If you want to hear what it sounds like over the entire track, we can just disable the crossover. Right? It's very like pumpy dancey, but it feels really rhythmic. The compressor kind of had a weird fluttery thing that it was doing, and I don't think it really helps when you're trying just to kind of accentuate a groove. I think this is a better tool for that. Obviously, you're not going to want to do it that aggressively, right? Actually, it doesn't even sound that bad. It sounds kind of cool that way. It just really makes it feel like it's exploding and it's very lively. I think it's still a little over the top, and we can tame it two ways. One is you can change the amount. So this is like basically a dry wet knob. No pumping. So you can go somewhere in the middle. I like around 60%-ish. And then also you can split up by band. So if you want to pump just some of the high frequencies above our crossover point, above 300 hertz, you just dial this up. The more this is dialed up, the more the high frequencies will be ducked from our signal, okay? I don't want to duck the high frequencies. The power of the snare and kick live under 300 hertz, so that's the stuff I want to duck. I'll let the high frequencies just do their thing so it sounds natural, doesn't have this like crazy pumping thing going on. But we can still duck some of it, right? It's still going to clean up some, but you know, we have the ability to really fine tune the amount of ducking that we're doing and in what frequency range we're ducking. So it sounds extremely clean, extremely natural, and it really enforces the groove better than any compressor I've personally used. Let me slow this down so you can really hear what's happening. So as we dial the highs back, you hear how they're not really being affected in the room track? They're not pumping. It's only the lower frequencies. Why this is important is that we can just selectively duck the muddy bass frequencies that are actually causing all the problems and leave the top end of our cymbals and everything else intact without doing any ducking or maybe just a little bit of ducking. That is important for the clarity of the mix. So it doesn't sound like there's any ducking happening, but it is. And it's done in a region that our ears aren't that sensitive to. So it doesn't mess with the spatial or tonal characteristics of our drums. Check this out. I'll roll back the crossover frequency and you'll start hearing that the top end stops pumping so much and it starts just being left alone. So really pumpy. So top end is being left alone. So I'm willing to bet that you probably don't even hear the ducking happening anymore. That's how clean it is. Take the listen mode off and let's hear what it sounds like with the full drum kit now. Let's make it a little bit more obvious so you can really hear the effect. The other thing that I'm finding that I really like is it makes the drums feel like they're blossoming or blooming as the drummer's playing it. It feels more alive. It feels like you're in a room with someone who's really hammering down on these cymbals, and it just makes the mix exciting. And if you combine that with this same strategy on bass, let's just do the same thing. Side chain in just the kick drum. And now we have control over our kick drum pumping. We don't really want the high energy of the kick drum to be ducking because that's going to be distracting. It's going to sound like there's crazy movement. Let's just clean up the muddy frequencies that always are a problem for bass and kick. 220 hertz and below. Let's duck all that out and let's leave the top end completely open. Slow it down a little bit. That sounds really good to me. Let's bypass it so you can hear how much we lose the impact of the kick without it. So it's a little too slow. I think we have to keep it at, 1/16 or change this shape a little bit because it feels like it's swelling in and I don't like that much. That sounds much better. So here is drums and bass with the ducking, and then we'll do drums and bass with the compression side chain instead. Here we go. With the ducker, it just feels like the drums are more natural. You're not getting any really weird movement in the cymbals. It just feels open, spacious, and very controlled and rhythmic. EDM and pop producers, watch out. The rock and metal community is going to be taking these tools that you have and you've been using for years and using them to level up our mixes. So let me know, do you use sidechain compression or do you think you can just mix it good enough that you really don't have to do that? Is this the first time you've ever heard a rock or metal producer using an envelope shaper to do the sidechaining? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have a favorite go-to plugin to do this type of stuff, also let me know in the comments. Don't forget, in the description is my free downloadable rock and metal mixing cheat sheet. Go and download that. It's super valuable. You can print it out and keep it with you on your desk when you're mixing. If you find these tutorials helpful, you can support me by essentially buying me a cup of coffee when you join my membership down below. My name is Bobby Balo. I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Rayton Productions, and I'll see you in another video.